Funding for Rural America Coming of Age was provided in part by a grant from the Atlantic Richfield Foundation in association with Pennsylvania Green Thumb Incorporated.
Hello, I'm Lorne Greene. You probably hear a lot of numbers on the evening news, but let me share just two startling statistics with you. One is that over the next 40 years, the percentage of elderly citizens in America will double. The other is this. For the first time in a century and a half, America's small towns are growing faster than the cities. Now, these two trends, an aging population and a growing rural population, will affect the way all of us, young and old, will live our lives. What's your image of rural America? If you said farms and friendly villages, you'd be only partly right. You'd need to add unemployment and isolation to the picture. You'd also have to include the 20% of rural elderly who live in poverty. Now, these are the realities of life for the 1/3 of elderly Americans who live in rural areas. Urban residents and young people are learning about those realities at White House conferences on aging held once each decade in Washington, D.C. And it's at these national conferences that issues important to both urban and rural seniors are brought up. Issues like transportation, energy, employment, health, and housing. I'd like to share with you a brief look at the lives of the rural elderly, based in part upon the recommendations made for the White House conferences. Well, there are problems, of course, serious ones, but there are also some innovative programs which deal with those problems and make rural life fuller and richer. Transportation, just getting where they have to go, may be the single biggest problem for elderly people living in small towns. The state of Pennsylvania estimates that after all transportation services are considered, fully 400,000 elderly are without a way to get around. That's understandable because fewer than half of them own or drive a car. And without a car in the country, you can't shop, you can't buy medicines, can't go to church, can't visit family. Now that's isolation. And isolation means loneliness. But progress is being made, even in remote areas like this one in central Pennsylvania, where a single transportation authority serves 6 counties and 5,000 square miles.
According to a recent survey conducted by our planner, about 44% of the people indicated that they would not make the trip. In other words, they would not be able to do their social activities, their shopping, essential shopping activities, this type of thing, if the authority were not available, if the bus service was not available to them.
You don't go very many places because there isn't any buses, you know, that take you, that's public buses. And if you don't have a car or somebody to take you, you're out of luck.
Between 50 and 70 seniors come to the Houtzdale Community Center every day. Most of them come by bus to join in the center's motto of good food and fellowship.
Well, some of them said they can't imagine being without this now. At first they said, well, to get dressed during, you know, first thing in the morning, get dressed and go out for the day, you know, they just thought that was too much, you know. They said they don't know how they ever got along without the center. Can't imagine themselves not going out and meeting people.
We find that in the rural areas, you have a predominantly older population. And as the people become older, they become more and more dependent as far as transportation goes. But I believe that the Houtzdale Community Center allows them to have some sort of independence, and that is a place where they can go and meet, gather socially, etc.
Because of the popularity of the center, the bus routes are now scheduled around the center's activities. And the buses pick up passengers as far as half a mile from their routes. A real advantage for seniors who can't walk very far. However, first, you have to persuade the elderly to use the bus.
Getting on a bus can be a very scary situation. Barbara makes it convenient for them to get on their vehicle in that she'll introduce them to the service, make the features of the vehicle known to them, and in instances where needed, aid them on and off the vehicle.
See you later.
Barbara takes her job very personally, and she appears to get pleasure out of serving the ridership. She makes suggestions to our office where we can better the route versus a driver that wouldn't make suggestions. And Barbara does all these things correctly, and I think that's a key ingredient as far as this route goes.
I really enjoy being with older people. They just enjoy life, and I really think they deserve coming to the center, going on the bus to get groceries, pick up the prescriptions. They really do enjoy it. They enjoy being together on the bus. Some of the people are really alone. Some has no kids. Some doesn't see anyone until I pick them up the next day when I let them off from the night before. And that is loneliness.
Oh, it's so easy to ignore the realities of life. To judge by the way many of us refuse to consider the idea of growing older, you'd think it was an option instead of being inevitable. Yet all of us, city or country dweller, can make our later years a time of joy and fulfillment. All that's needed is anticipation, looking ahead to the time when we will all grow older. We must plan individually, of course, but we must also plan as a society the world we want to live in as older Americans. Then we can say, as Robert Browning did, grow old along with me. The best is yet to be.
Funding for Rural America Coming of Age was provided in part by a grant from the Atlantic Richfield Foundation in association with Pennsylvania Green Thumb Incorporated.